Lower the lights. Put on your headphones. This story begins now. Before we begin, let me ask you something. What does justice really look like? Is it written in law books, spoken from a judge's bench, or revealed in how a society treats the hungry? Today's story begins with a crime so small it barely seems worth mentioning. A loaf of bread, a piece of cheese, and a 15-year-old boy standing alone in a courtroom. But what happened next would challenge the meaning of guilt, responsibility, and power itself. This is not just a story about a boy who stole food. It's a story about who we choose to blame and who we choose to protect. There are courtrooms where justice is loud, gavels slam, voices rise, sentences fall like stones. And then there are courtrooms where justice whispers. This story begins in one of those quieter rooms. It was a gray morning in a small American town. The kind of town where people recognize each other at grocery stores, where the streets look peaceful enough to convince you that hunger doesn't live there. But hunger does not need chaos to survive, that it only needs silence. The boy stood alone at the defense table, 15 years old, too thin for his jacket, too young for the weight already pressing his shoulders downward. His name was Ethan Miller. His hands were cuffed in front of him, metal far too heavy for wrists that still carried the softness of childhood. He stared at the floor, not because he was ashamed, but because looking up felt dangerous. Across the room, a shopkeeper sat stiffly, arms folded. A loaf of bread and a small block of cheese lay sealed in a plastic evidence bag. That was it. That was the crime. The courtroom was nearly full that day. Lawyers, clerks, a few curious locals, and several people waiting for their own hearings. No one expected this case to be memorable. Cases like this were processed, not remembered, until the judge entered. Judge Harold Whitman wasn't a dramatic man, late 50s, silver hair, reading glasses perched permanently at the edge of his nose. He had seen everything: theft, violence, lies polished to sound like truth. He believed deeply in the law, but he believed even more deeply in responsibility. As he took his seat, the room rose. "Be seated," he said calmly. The case was read aloud. The state versus Ethan Miller. Theft of food items valued at $7.83. $7.83. Judge Whitman adjusted his glasses and looked at the boy for the first time. Ethan flinched, not noticeably, but enough for someone who paid attention. The judge had learned long ago that fear announces itself quietly. "Ethan," he said, not unkindly, "do you understand why you're here today?" The boy swallowed. "Yes, sir." "And you understand the charge against you?" "Yes." The judge nodded, flipping a page on the file. Then he paused. Something about the report didn't sit right. "Before we proceed," Judge Whitman said, "I'd like to hear from you directly." The courtroom shifted slightly. This was unusual for a case this small. "Why did you steal the bread and cheese?" Silence. The kind that stretches. Ethan's fingers tightened around each other. His lips parted, but no sound came out. His chest rose too quickly. And then his eyes filled. Tears don't always fall when people expect them to. Sometimes they wait until resistance is exhausted. "My mom is sick," Ethan said finally. His voice cracked, not loudly, just enough to expose the effort it took to speak at all. "She's been sick for a long time." Judge Whitman leaned back slightly. "What kind of sick?" "I don't know the word," Ethan whispered. "The doctors say it's chronic. She can't work anymore." A sniffle escaped him. He wiped his face with his sleeve, embarrassed by his own humanity. "I tried getting a job," he continued, "but no one hires someone my age. And the food stamps, they ran out last week." The courtroom was silent now. No shifting. No coughing. I hadn't eaten since yesterday, Ethan said. And my mom, she told me she wasn't hungry, but I could tell she was lying. His voice broke completely then. I just wanted something we could share. The judge removed his glasses. The shopkeeper cleared his throat uncomfortably. Judge Whitman looked at the evidence bag again. Bread. Cheese. Then he looked at the boy, really looked at him. Did you try asking for help? The judge asked softly. Ethan nodded. I went to the church. They said the pantry was empty. I went to the shelter, but it was full. He hesitated. I was scared to ask the store. That sentence landed heavier than the rest. Scared to ask for food. Judge Whitman closed the file. He sat there for a long moment, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he stood. Judges rarely stand during hearings. Everyone in the room felt it. Something was happening. Judge Whitman looked around the courtroom slowly. At the lawyers, at the clerks, at the observers, at the people waiting their turn for justice. And then he spoke. If a child in our society is forced to steal food just to survive, he said, voice steady but charged with emotion, then the criminal is not him. He paused. It is all of us. A murmur rippled through the room. The shopkeeper's face tightened. Judge Whitman continued. We sit here every day passing judgments as if poverty is a personal failure, as if hunger is a moral flaw. His gaze hardened. But this courtroom exists because society exists. And society has failed this child. He turned toward the clerk. I am imposing a fine. Confusion flickered across faces. Every adult present in this courtroom today, the judge said, will be fined $50. Gasps, whispers, disbelief, for allowing a world where a 15-year-old believes stealing food is his only option. Then he turned to the shopkeeper. And you, he said calmly, will be fined $500, not for reporting theft, but for seeing hunger and choosing punishment over compassion. The shopkeeper opened his mouth to protest. The judge raised a hand. All collected money, Judge Whitman said, will be given to Ethan Miller. Ethan's head snapped up. What? He whispered. You will leave this courtroom today, the judge said gently, without punishment. The room was frozen. No one breathed. But Judge Whitman wasn't finished. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the bench. Let this be recorded, he said. If there is a king, and someone in his kingdom sleeps hungry. His voice dropped. The one truly guilty is the king. And just like that, the gavel fell. But outside that courtroom, far beyond that small American town, another question waited quietly. Why did this judgment feel so rare? And why, in so many places, does justice only seem to recognize the poor? Outside that courtroom, the world kept moving. Cars passed. People scrolled their phones. Lunch was ordered, eaten, forgotten. And yet, something unusual had happened in that quiet room. Something that rarely survives outside courtroom walls. A judge had asked a dangerous question. Not what law was broken, but who had truly failed. The story of Ethan Miller would travel quickly through local news. Headlines would call it unorthodox. Some would say heartwarming. Others would call it judicial overreach. But beneath the opinions lay a truth no headline could comfortably hold. Justice, in most places, does not look like this. In most places, Ethan would have left with a record. A label. A lesson that said, hunger is a crime when you are poor. And that brings us to a harder conversation. One we avoid because it reflects us too clearly. Because for every Judge Whitman, there are hundreds who never stand up. In many countries, perhaps even in yours, courtrooms do not whisper. They bargain. Here, the law is written cleanly on paper, but smudged in practice. Here, punishment depends less on guilt and more on position. A poor man steals bread, he is arrested. A powerful man steals millions, he is investigated. And sometimes, even that is too much. In these places, justice has a price tag, and everyone knows it. There are judges who arrive at court in vehicles worth more than entire neighborhoods. Judges whose children study abroad while defendants cannot afford bail. Judges whose verdicts change tone after private meetings. And still they sit beneath the symbol of fairness. Still they say, the court is blind. But the people are not blind. They see who walks free. They see who stays behind bars. They see that laws often fall hardest on those already bent beneath life's weight. When a man steals because he is hungry, he is called immoral. When a corporation steals wages, land, futures, it is called strategy. And when people speak of justice, they lower their voices. Because saying the truth out loud can be dangerous. That is why Judge Whitman's words mattered. Not because they were poetic, but because they were rare. He did something most systems quietly discourage. He made the powerful uncomfortable. He reminded everyone in that room that responsibility does not end at the edge of legality. But imagine, just for a moment, what would have happened if Ethan had lived somewhere else? If the judge had been afraid? If compassion had been seen as weakness? If the courtroom had been filled with indifference instead of conscience? Ethan would have learned a different lesson. That society does not care why you fall, only that you did. That hunger makes you disposable. That rules are for those without protection. And once a child learns that lesson, something inside them hardens. Slowly, quietly. And when enough people harden, societies break. Because hunger is not just an empty stomach. It is an empty promise. It tells people that survival is their own problem, even when the system stacks the odds against them. And here is the uncomfortable truth we avoid. Most injustice does not come from cruelty. It comes from neglect. From people saying, that's just how things are. From systems that punish symptoms instead of causes. From kings who forget the ones sleeping hungry in their kingdom. Judge Whitman understood something many refuse to accept. Justice is not only about enforcing laws. It is about protecting dignity. And when dignity is stripped away, laws become weapons. That is why his ruling felt shocking. Because it reminded everyone of something we used to believe. That a society is judged not by how it treats the powerful, but by how it treats its most vulnerable. The question is not whether Ethan broke the law. The question is why the law broke him first. And if a system cannot answer that honestly, then no amount of verdicts will make it just. After the courtroom emptied, there was no applause, no dramatic music, just people filing out slowly, each carrying something heavier than when they arrived. Ethan walked beside his mother that afternoon, the envelope of money tucked carefully inside his jacket. He held it like it might disappear if he loosened his grip. For the first time in weeks, they bought groceries without counting coins. For the first time in months, dinner didn't come with fear. But this story was never just about a boy and a judge. It was about a mirror. Because the truth is, Judge Whitman did not create compassion that day. He revealed its absence. He forced everyone in that room to confront a reality they benefited from ignoring. And once seen, it could not be unseen. In many parts of the world, people like to say, if someone is hungry, it's their own fault. It's an easy belief, comfortable, because it absolves us of responsibility. But hunger does not choose. It visits quietly. It moves into homes after job losses, illnesses, disasters, bad luck, things no amount of morality can prevent. And when hunger arrives, it doesn't ask about character. It only asks how long you can endure. That is why the old saying still matters. If there is a king, and someone in his kingdom sleeps hungry, the one truly guilty is the king. But here is the question we avoid asking ourselves. In modern society, who is the king? Is it the government, the courts, the wealthy, or is it all of us? Participating silently in a system that works well enough for us to tolerate its failures? Because power today is not always worn like a crown. Sometimes it looks like comfort. Sometimes it looks like indifference. Sometimes it looks like saying, "That's not my problem." Judge Whitman did not claim to fix society. He did something far more unsettling. He reminded people that justice without empathy is just procedure. That laws, when stripped of humanity, become tools of harm. And that morality cannot be outsourced to institutions alone. Every courtroom reflects the society outside its doors. Every verdict is a snapshot of what we value. And when a hungry child stands accused, the real trial is not his. It is ours. Because systems do not fail overnight. They fail gradually, through excuses, delays, and collective silence. Through people waiting for someone else to act. Judge Whitman broke that silence. Not with anger, not with force, but with accountability. He made everyone in that room pay, not to punish them, but to remind them, "You are part of this." And maybe that is why this story endures. Because it asks something uncomfortable of us. It asks whether we want justice to feel fair, or to actually be fair. Whether we want laws to protect order, or protect people. And whether, when faced with hunger, we will respond with punishment or responsibility. Ethan will grow up, so will countless others like him. And the lessons they learn will shape the world they build. The only question is, what will we teach them? That survival is a crime? Or that society stands with its weakest? Because one day, we may not be the judge, or the shopkeeper, or the observer in the courtroom. One day, we may be the ones standing there hungry. And on that day, justice will reveal what it has always been. Not a system, but a choice. When the courtroom emptied, life went on, as it always does. But stories like this linger. Not because they are rare, but because they remind us of what justice could be. We like to believe that laws alone make a society fair. But laws don't feed the hungry. Rules don't heal illness, and punishment doesn't fix neglect. People do. And maybe that's the real judgment in this story. Not the one delivered by a judge, but the one quietly handed to all of us. Because in the end, justice is not only decided in courtrooms. It's decided in everyday moments, in what we ignore, what we excuse, and what we choose to care about. If there is a king, and someone in his kingdom sleeps hungry, then the question is no longer who is guilty. The question is, what will we do about it? Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like and share.